Hey guys and welcome back. In this video, we shall learn how to download and install MySQL on Windows computer, and also we shall see a brief introduction to MySQL and some of the commands that we can use on MySQL. MySQL is one of the most popular database management system, which is also called as DBMS, available right now. It's light, open source and easy to install and use, which makes it a good choice for those starting to learn and work with relational database. Although it's a good option for beginners, MySQL is also robust enough to support larger production applications with multi-users and multi-threading support. Now in this video we shall cover the process of installing MySQL on your local Windows machine, from downloading to creating and using your first database. Now when you are done, you'll have a complete functional MySQL server running and ready to use locally. Now we shall begin with the installation process, and let's get straight to the point. Installing MySQL on Windows is a very easy but quite a long process, and in this video we'll follow step by step how to do it using the MySQL installer. And first of all, you will need to download the installer. So to download the installer, you can open your web browser and then just search for download MySQL and hit enter. Now on the result page, you just have to open the first link that occurs, that is the MySQL downloads. You just have to click on it and the downloads page of MySQL is going to open up. Then just scroll down below and then you can see we have this MySQL Enterprise Edition, then MySQL Cluster CGE. Now keep in mind, both of these come with commercial license. So what we are looking for is the last one, which is this one, MySQL Community GPL downloads. Now this GPL stands for GNU General Public License, which is among the most popular open source licenses. So we can just click on this link. Alright, now on this page we have to select MySQL installer based on the operating system, and since I am using Windows operating system, so I am going to click here which says MySQL installer for Windows. Let me just zoom in a little bit. Alright, now on this page we have two options based on the operating system, and here Microsoft Windows is selected by default because this link is for Windows only. Now coming down, we have two kinds of installer here. The first installer is a web based installer, which means the installer is going to be only 2.4 megabyte, so you can download it right away. Then after you start the installation, the installer is going to download the rest of the packages which are going to be needed while installing MySQL on your computer. Now the second option is this one, which is the offline installer. Here the entire installer along with all the packages that are going to be needed to install MySQL on your computer are going to be downloaded at once, and that is the reason why the size of this installer is 428 megabyte. And also you can see it's for Windows x86, which means it's for 32-bit, and it is MSI installer. So we can just click here on download button. Now it's asking you to either log in into the Oracle web account or you can sign up, and we are going to use the third option, which is this one. No thanks, just start my download. And as you can see, the download of the installer has begun, and then depending on the speed of your internet connection, it might take some time. For me it's going to take 2 minutes, so I'm just going to fast forward to the point where the download is complete and we can start with the installation. Now once the download is complete, you can open the folder where you have downloaded the installer of MySQL. So for me it's in the download folder. So I'm just going to open my download folder. Here is the installer that I have downloaded, and as you can see 8.0.33 is the latest version of MySQL at the time of making this video. So I'm just going to start the installer now. It's going to first configure the installation and then ask for the user's permission to proceed. And here we just have to click on yes to give the permission to proceed. And we have to give the permission once again. So just click on yes. Now once the configuration of the installer is complete, we will be able to finally see the installer interface. And as you can see in the installer, the process is going to consist of 4 steps. First one is choosing a setup type. Second one is downloading the necessary files or packages to finish the installer. Third is installing the software, and then fourth is finishing the installation. Now here on this window, you can observe there are 5 types of setups available in the first step. The first one is the developer default, second is the server only, third is the client only, fourth is full, fifth is custom, and you can check the side box to see what each of them will install. Like for example, if you have selected this developer default, then on the side box you can see what is going to be included in the developer default setup type. So it's going to include MySQL server and the tools which are required for MySQL application development, and it is useful if you intend to develop applications for an existing server. And the setup is going to include MySQL server, MySQL shell, MySQL router, MySQL Workbench, MySQL connectors, and some examples and tutorials. Now I strongly recommend, especially if you're just getting started with SQL, to select the default option, because the most important features which we are going to need later are MySQL Server, MySQL Workbench, MySQL for Visual Studio, and the documentation, and all of these are included in the developer default. And if you just want to see what are the resources available in different types of setup, you can just click on those setup types and then you can see what are the resources available with each of them. Like if you click on server only, it's going to install only the MySQL server. Now this setup type should be chosen where you want to deploy a MySQL server but will not be developing MySQL applications. So keep that in mind. You will not be able to develop MySQL applications with server only setup type. If we click on client only, now it's going to include MySQL shell, router, workbench, connector, but it's not going to include MySQL server. And for development, you are going to need the MySQL server as well. If you click on full is going to install all the resources of the MySQL. So either you can click on default developer setup type, or you can click on full also if you're not sure what are the resources that you are going to need later. And also if you click on custom, then you can define and choose what resources you want to install with your MySQL. But for the purpose of this video, I'll suggest you to select developer default and then just click on next. Now at this point, there is a high chance you will be asked to install some required software, the most common being the Visual Code or Python. And you can also read from here, the following products have failing requirement, which means for the MySQL connector, it's going to require Python 64-bit, and MySQL installer will attempt to resolve them automatically. Requirements marked as manual cannot be resolved automatically, which means if the requirement is marked as manual, which you can see here, it's written as manual, then it cannot be resolved automatically by MySQL. So in this case, you will have to click on each of the item if there are many items present here, and if the status says manual for those items, then you will have to click on them one by one and then resolve them manually. So if you just click here on manual, then here you can read this is a manual requirement. You can attempt to resolve the requirement using the information provided. Once you are done with that, you can press the check button to see if the requirement has been met. So we can just click here on download URL that has been provided for Python, and it's going to open the link in your browser. And here you can see we have this download button which says download Python 3.11, which is the latest version of Python at the time of making this video. So I'll just click here on download button, And after the download is complete, you can just click here to open the file, and then the installer interface is going to open up. So all we have to do is tick mark on this option that says use admin privileges when installing Python, and also tick mark this option which says add python.exe to path, and then you can just click here on install now. This is the default installation. You don't have to change any settings here, and go with the default settings. Then the Python software is going to ask for your user's permission, so you will have to click on yes here. Now once the installation is complete and you get a message like this which says setup was successful, all you have to do is click on this close button, and let's minimize the browser also. And then coming back to our MySQL installer, now we have to click here on this check button to see if the requirements have been met or not. And on clicking on the check button, you can see the requirement has been met and the status now says complete, which means we are good to go, and we can click on the next button. Now you have reached the download section. The section is self-explanatory. You will have to download all the components in the setup option you have selected. And from here you can see the list which is going to be downloaded and installed later. Now this MySQL server is the database server itself. MySQL Workbench is the application which is going to be required to manage the server. Then we have the MySQL shell, router, connector for ODBC, C++, Java, Net, Python, then MySQL documentation, and then some samples and examples. So we can just click here on execute, and you can see it has started installing those products for you. Now this might take a few minutes to conclude. Now when it is over, you will be able to see tick marks against each of the products, and these tick marks signify that the process is complete and all of these products are installed. Now we can click here on next button. Now the next step is to configure the server, and you're going to see a screen something like this, and we will have to configure each of these three products one by one, and the status is also ready to configure for each of these products, so we will have to configure them one by one. So let's just click here on next. So first of all, we have to configure the network, and from here you can choose the correct server configuration type for this MySQL server installation. This setting will define how much system resources are assigned to the MySQL server instance. Now you can see that the configuration type selected is development computer, so you can just click here. Now in the list you can see that we have three types of configuration. The first one is for the development computer or the development machine. Now this is a development computer and many other applications will be installed on it. A minimal amount of memory will be used by MySQL. So this is the preferred option that you should choose, because you are going to use your computer as a development computer and you are going to run many other applications on your computer. So a minimal amount of memory will be used by MySQL. And if you are installing MySQL on a server, then many other server applications are going to be run on your computer. So in that case, MySQL should have medium memory usage, and there you can use server computer configuration. And then we have dedicated computer. Now this computer is dedicated to running the MySQL database server, which means if you are going to run MySQL database server on a computer which is going to be used only for MySQL and no other server, then you can use this configuration type, which is dedicated computer, and MySQL is going to make use of all the available memory. So I'm just going to select development computer so that this computer can be used for development purpose and I can install other server applications. Now coming under the connectivity, now you will have to define a port which should be kept open for the communication with the MySQL server. And if you don't have a good reason to change it, I will suggest you to keep it the default one, that is 3306. There's no reason to change it unless you know what you are doing. And then after that, you can just click here on the next button. Now it is for the authentication method, and let's stick with the recommended option here as well. And the recommended option is this one: use strong password encryption for authentication. It is the recommended one. And since I am installing MySQL 8, so it supports a new authentication based on improved stronger SHA-256 based password method. Now if you want to select this second option, which is the legacy authentication method, it should be used in the condition where your client and applications cannot be updated to the latest version of MySQL. So in such case, you might want to use this second option to retain MySQL compatibility with the older versions. Otherwise, you should select this option, that is the first one and the recommended one, to use the strong password encryption, and then click on next. Now it's time to create the root account. You will be asked to set a password, and you must remember to use a strong password here. So I'll just enter a password. And if it shows password strength as weak, you can change the password, because this is going to be the root password. So I'll suggest you not to have a weak password here. So now the password strength is medium, so I can leave it like that. And also on this same screen, you can create other users and set their passwords and permissions. And to do that, you will have to click here on add user button. And then after that, you'll have to fill up these blanks to create a user. So first of all, we have to give a name to the user. So I'll just give my name here. And then we have to select host. Now if you click here, then you can see we have two options here. First one is all host, which will include all the hosts on your computer. The second one is the local host. So I will just let it be on the first one. Then it's asking for the role. Depending on the type of the role that you choose from the list, you are providing the permissions to the user that you are creating. And you can see the type of the users here. Backup admin, which is going to have minimal rights needed to backup any database. Then we have DB admin, that is the database admin, grants the rights to perform all tasks. Then we have database designer, rights to create and reverse engineer any database scheme. So in the same way, we have different types of user. If you want to go through them, you can go through the list and create many users according to your need. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to create a database admin so that I can have all the rights to perform all the tasks and functions. Then authentication has to be MySQL. Then it says MySQL user credentials. Now I have to create a password for this user. Now keep in mind the password that we have created for the root is different. Either you can have the same password in both of these places, or you can have different password for your user as well as for the MySQL root account. And it's a good practice to have different password for your root account as well as for all the users that you are going to create. Now once you are done with all these details, you can just click on OK, and you can see a user has been created. Now let's click on next. And also if you want to create multiple users, you can do that from here. You can have different kinds of user with different roles. And then after that, finally you can click here on next. Now on this window, you can choose the Windows service details, such as the service name, account type. And if you want to start MySQL when you turn on your computer, again the default settings will work in most cases. You can see configure MySQL server as a Windows service, and then Windows service details, and then the name of the service is going to be MySQL 8080 because this is the version of MySQL which we are installing right now. And as I said, the default options will work in most cases. So until you have a good reason to change these default settings, I'll suggest you to stick with them and then click here on next. Now it says server file permissions. MySQL installer can secure the server's data directly by updating the permissions of files and folders located at, and this is the location. Do you want MySQL installer to update the server file permissions for you? Here you can tick mark or select this option, grant full access to the user running the Windows service, and administrator group only. Other users and groups will not have access. You can go ahead with this option. Otherwise, if you know what you're doing, then you can choose the second or the third option also. So I'll just stick with the first option, which is the default option, and then I'll just click here on next. Now on this screen, it's going to apply the configuration. You can also see what are the configuration steps that the installer is going to take now. So it's going to write the configuration file, then it's going to update Windows firewall rules because we are opening a port for MySQL, then adjusting Windows service because we are creating a new Windows service for MySQL which is going to be run by default at the time of startup, and then initialize database. So it's going to initialize the database, then update the permissions for the data folder, then it's going to start the server, then it will apply the security settings, and then it will create the user accounts that we have defined earlier, and then finally it's going to update the start menu link. So we can just click here on execute and we can just wait for this configuration to be applied, and as and when these configuration changes are applied, you can see one tick mark next to them. Now once all the configuration changes have been applied, then you will get a message like this. The configuration for MySQL Server 8.0.33 was successful. Click finish to continue. So you are just good to go and you can just click here on finish. So now the MySQL server has been configured completely. The next thing that will be configured is the MySQL router. So we can just click here on next. Now on this window, I am going to let this option be unticked. It says bootstrap MySQL router for use with InnoDB cluster. Now it depends upon your use and depends upon the functions that you want from your MySQL. Then after that, click here on finish and you can see MySQL router configuration not needed. And then the third one is samples and examples. So just click on next. Now it's going to connect to the server. Here we have to type the root account's password and then we'll have to click on this check button to see if the connection was successful or not. So the username is root and then let's type the password. Now if the password is correct, then we will be able to connect to the server successfully. So I'll just click here on check. So if there is a mistake with the password, if you have misspelled your password or forgotten your password, then you're going to get a message like this, connection failed, and then you will have to retype the password. Now after retyping the password, you can click here on check, and also you have to be sure that this is the password for the root account and not for the user account that you have created. Then you can just click here on check, and if you have entered the correct password, then you are going to get status message like this, connection succeeded, and then you are good to go to click on this next button. Now this screen is followed by another one asking to apply the configuration. Now here we just have to execute it, so we can just click on execute, and the configuration for samples and examples is successful, so we can just click on finish. Now you can see that for all these three products, the configuration has been completed, and here in the second one, that is the MySQL router, configuration was not needed. So everything is fine till now, and we can just click here on next button. And this is the last screen. So we have successfully reached the last screen of the installer. If you untick this one, then the MySQL Workbench will not start after the setup. If you untick this one, then the MySQL shell will not start up. And also if you want to see the log of the installation, then you can click here and copy the log to clipboard. And these are some useful links which you can go through. Anyways, then you can just click here on finish, and it's going to open up MySQL shell as well as the Workbench. And you can see this is the workbench. Let me just minimize this one first. This is the MySQL shell. And if for some reason MySQL shell or the MySQL workbench did not open up after the setup was complete, you can always click here on the start button, and you can click here on all apps. Then from here you will have to browse to find the MySQL installation folder, and from here you can see this is the MySQL workbench, this is the MySQL shell, and this is the MySQL command line client. So let's open up this one, and the first thing it's going to do is ask for your password, and here we will have to enter the password for the root user. And here you can read, welcome to the MySQL monitor, command end with semicolon, your MySQL connection ID is 24. Now there are a lot of commands that you can run from MySQL command line client, and these are the same commands which you can use on the workbench also. Workbench is going to provide you with a graphical user interface, and with the command line client you can work with the commands directly. Like I'll show you some of the commands. You can just write show databases, then semicolon, and then hit enter. Now you can observe that these are the databases which are by default present or by default provided with your workbench. These are the samples and the examples ones. Now let's say we want to use one database, so I'll just say use my SQL, then semicolon, and hit enter. And you can see the message, it says database changed. We have used one database now, it's active, and now we can show all the tables which are present in this database. So for that we will just have to write show tables and then semicolon, hit enter, and you can see inside the MySQL database these are the tables which are present. So let's say I want to display the content of any one of the table. Let's say I'll display the content of the user table, so I will write select. Then after space we have to write the name of the columns if we know it. If we don't know them, we can just use star. This is going to select all the columns. Then from, after from we have to write the name of the table, and from the available list of the tables in the database you can select any of the table, and then at last we have to enter semicolon and then hit enter. And here you can see it says there are 5 rows in set. Let's select a different database. I'll write use world. World was also one of the database. You can see the database has changed. Now we can show the tables which are present in this database. Alright, now in this database there are 3 tables present. So let's display the content of one of the tables. So I'll write select star from country and then hit enter. And there are 239 rows in this table. So this is just a basic on how we work with the command line client and how we use the commands. Anyways, I'll just close this command line client for now, and I will open up Workbench. Alright, let me just maximize it. Now the first thing that we need to do here is to choose the connection to the server that you have created. So just click here, and then you will have to enter the root password. And also you can tick mark this one that says save password involved, so that you don't have to enter the root password every time. And then just click here on OK. If your password is correct, then you will be able to connect to the server and your working space will open up something like this. So this is the interface of the workbench, and then notice that we have this schemas tab here. If you click on it, then you can see the 3 database that we were playing around with when we were using the command line client. And here we have these sample databases, and this is the main window where we are going to write the queries for the database. and I'll show how to write queries here. Let's say we want to create a new database, so we just have to write create, then space, then we have to write database because we are creating a database, and then you can give any name to your database. Let's say I'll just write my first database or my first DB, and then we have to use this lightning icon to run the command. So you can see in the output window that this command or this query was executed, and under this schemas window we will have to refresh so that the database that we have created just now can be displayed here in this window. So I'll just click here on refresh, and now you can see we have the database that I have created just now using this query. And if I click here, all of these will be empty because we have not created any tables or views or stored any procedures. So these all are going to be empty. And if you click here on world and then click on the tables, then we have the table as the country, which is the table that we opened up in our command line client also. So if you click on the columns, you can see there are so many columns under this table which were displayed in the command line client also. So along with the name of the country, we had a code, we had the name of the continent, then the region and many other details along with them. So this is just a basic idea how we work with the MySQL workbench as well as the command line client. So now let's change the current active database to the world database. So previously we have just created this database, my first database, and which is open also. Now to open a new database or open any other database, we just have to write here use and then the name of the database. The name of the database is world, so I'll just write this, and then we have to click here on execute the selected portion. So just click here, and from here, from the action output, you can see we have this query successfully executed. So now this world database is active. Now the second thing that we need to do is we have to select the tables, and the available tables are city, country, and then country language. So let's open the content of the country table. And also, if you don't want to display all the columns that are present in a table, then you can give the name of those columns specifically. Like for example, if I just click on this arrow in the country table, then you can see we have this columns folder. If you click here, then you can see the name of all the columns that are present in this table country. So what I can do here is I will write select, and then instead of star I will write the name of the columns that I want to be present. Like I want select code, I want the code column, then I want the name of the country, so I'll write name and then comma, and then I want the capital city. I want these three columns from the table whose name is country. Now I will write country. So it's very simple. I have written select code, name, and then capital from country. Country is the name of the table, and then you can see the column code is here, then the name is here, and then capital is here. So all these three columns are present inside this table whose name is country. So now we can just execute it, and from here you can see the result of the query that I have run. It has returned 239 rows, and it has returned only the columns that I wanted to. So the columns that I wanted to was code and the name and then capital. So the name of the countries are here along with the name of the capital. Let me open India. Alright, India is here. So the code for India is IND, and then the code for capital is 1109. Now this is a topic for another video, why the name of the capital is not displayed. Instead a number is displayed. That is because of the foreign key this is actually a foreign key. And if you open the city table, then inside the city table, there will be a city whose name will be New Delhi, and the code for that city will be 1109. If you just want to check that, then I will show you from here. You can see we have this ID. So the ID of that city will be 1109 and the name will be New Delhi. Now if you just want to check that, then I'll quickly show you. We want to show everything, so I'll just write select star from the name of the table, and the name of the table here is city because we want to extract the name of a city. So the name of the table here is city. Then when we are giving some conditions, then we have to use the keyword where, and then we have to give the name of the column in which we want to place some kind of conditions. So this is the column whose name is ID. I want to place the condition on this column ID, and the ID should be 1109. So I will write it like this, 1109, and here we have to use a single equal to sign like this. Then we can run this command, and this command was also run successfully. 1 rows returned, and here you can see the ID is 1109 and the name is New Delhi. The country code is IND, that is India. District is Delhi and the population is also given there. So that's what I was trying to explain. This is the topic for another video. This was actually how we use foreign keys. And then this first column, which is ID, it is actually a primary key. So the topic is very vast. There are a lot of things that we can talk and discuss in database. But anyways, that's for another day and another time. For this video, the installation of MySQL as well as the configuration has been successfully completed. So that's all for this video. I hope you learned something new in this video, and if you did, then don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to see you in the next video. Till then, take care and thanks for watching.